Welcome into a bonus edition of Take Command, really a bonus segment because we got really distracted at the end of yesterday's show. A really fun sidebar on cadences. We completely nerded out, the kind of stuff that we know you guys love. It just didn't really fit in the actual meat and potatoes of an interesting podcast on things that were relevant to the Commanders right now. So we cut it out, and now we share it with you. So here it is. Nerds. I've only heard of one really closely held secret, and obviously the level that I've been around these conversations is different than yours. But a couple of years ago, when Lorenzo was still playing, there was one summer where Randall Cobb was also in town working out with us, with Chris Gorez and myself and Zoe, and we were talking about Aaron Rodgers and the scramble drill, and Randall was like, "I'm not telling you guys anything." He's like, I don't trust you. Looking at Zoe, is like a player, and you know, he's like, we could play you guys in the Super Bowl, and I don't need you knowing our scramble drill rules because it is like he was basically like, yes, it is organized. It is not like we're going out there and running around just hoping that Aaron finds us. Like there are rules, and if we do this, or if he does this, or if the guy next to me does this, then I do that, and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, he looked at me. He's like, I'm not saying anything around you because you're a press, even though you're here just working out with us right now. So absolutely not. And so that was the one thing. And then it was funny because this season, Kalen Keller wrote a piece for The Athletic, I think it was, about Rodgers' hand signals. And Rodgers was flaming mad about it because some of his former teammates talked about him, some of these things, and he was so upset, irrationally upset, and it was kind of a jerk about it because of course he was, because he's Aaron Rodgers. But he was super mad about the hand signal stuff, and the Aaron Rodgers hand signals, Aaron Rodgers scramble drill rules are the only things I've really heard that are super secretive. And okay, fine. How much of that is just Aaron Rodgers being paranoid versus actual things that you couldn't learn by watching tape, etc.?
So just as a point of comparison, so Kirk, right? Kirk was here for a long time, obviously in Minnesota. Kirk went through these great comprehensive lengths to make sure that all of our hot words and all of our hand signals were super insulated. So every single week he would watch the TV copy, and if he heard so we had a cadence that was yellow cadence, and he was like, oh, they heard yellow on the TV copy, we got to change it to dummy this week. And it's okay, so every week you're learning a whole bunch of new hand signals and calls, but he went to painstaking lengths to make sure that every single thing that he did was insulated and kept the offense sound. So the fact that Aaron Rodgers hadn't changed his hand signals for 5 years is mind-blowing to me that that's even a thing. Because I guarantee you those receivers go to different teams. They tell so just as an example, I got cut from Atlanta. I went to Houston. We were playing Atlanta. And they said, do you have anything on Atlanta? And I said, yes, I just was in training camp with them. So I copied all my notes into a Word document and sent it to them. So they knew all the cadences. They knew all the 2-minute stuff. That happens. And if you don't go around insulating those things, then teams are going to know from guys like me, from watching film, whatever it is. And I think the transfer of coaches from staffs is also pretty significant. So the fact that Aaron Rodgers was getting heated about that, I think is kind of ridiculous, honestly. But, hey, what do I know? So
yeah, it was so dumb. It was so dumb. Going after the reporter, and it's that's actually not what happened in the piece. If you read it, I didn't steal anything. Your guys just talked. Yeah. But yeah, no, I've definitely heard that, and Peyton Manning's talked about this on his detail show as well. You got to change it, and sometimes you kind of use that to your advantage. If you think that there's this amazing clip of Cam Newton, and it's Clay Matthews. It was a Panthers Packers game. Yeah. 2015, 16, somewhere in there. Yeah. And Clay Matthews is heard. You can hear it all in the TV copy. It's awesome. And it's you got that wheel route coming. And Cam barks back at him. It's oh, you think you got it, huh? And they ran
check this out.
Yeah. Or yeah, that's cool. Watch this, I think is what he says. and then Christian McCaffrey runs a choice and breaks him off back inside, and touchdown Carolina, and Cam has a good old time laughing it up with Clay Matthews. So if you can have teams thinking they got you and then counter off of it, like that's part of the gamesmanship of the NFL.
And I think you mentioned the Cam Newton thing. There was one with Peyton Manning, which was even more specific. So he had a code word. I forget what it was. A guy that I used to play with was telling me about this. He had a code word, and he said it every week. And then he said the code word in the game as a dummy. It was like dummy code word or whatever the call was. He said the code word. They changed their protection, or they changed the blitz package that the defense was running, and the concept was designed to beat the change. So he's able to actually get them to change into something and then beat it, kind of like what you're talking about there. But I think that's part of it. And I know we're getting a little off topic here, but the fact that people get upset about that, like that's everyone's looking for those edges. Like we had a coach when I was in Atlanta who used to listen to TV copy, and he would just turn the volume up really loud, and he'd be like, "All right, we got these words. Like this is the old line call we heard. This is whatever it is," and it's like so.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think if you're a defensive player and you don't watch like if you're a D lineman and you don't watch some of the TV copy to get as good of a beat as you can on the quarterback cadence, like you're shorting yourself.
Right.
And it's on the quarterbacks to mix it up, because some guys get into a real rhythm. Like, man, the guys that I covered, I think to this day, maybe we'll do this as a really dumb segment at some point in the middle of the offseason on the podcast if we're really short on material. We're going to just play Alex Smith's cadence. We're going to play Kirk's cadence. Maybe one or two more. Colts, I could probably still get. Like, if we could do it for you two, guys that you played with. Go pull their cadence off a TV copy and just listen to it. and then see if we could guess who it was. Like, I watch a Minnesota game to this day, and you got Kirk's wide 80, and you're just like, okay, cool. That's Kirk's hasn't changed. But, like, he mixes it up often enough that he'll get guys to jump. And, like, that's why guys like Rodgers Carson had that earlier this year in the Jacksonville game. Like, he sealed the game by getting someone to jump. Like, that's part of quarterbacking. I know, like, again, we're way off of should they interview Kellen Moore for secret intel, but, like, I think this stuff is fun and, like, really fascinating. Yeah. The level of detail and the level of bleep housery that happens in with some of these details in the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, like that cadence you're talking about, like that's coached up. It's coached up to sound the same every time. So it's like wide 80, sit hut. And as a player, as an offensive player, it's the roll of the second wide 80, sit hut. So you can anticipate the snap count and get off ahead of it, right? The ball's actually snapped on like the S of set. So the defense is a little bit late because they're listening for the T, right? So then you build off your cadences, right? Like on 2 is wide 80, sit hut, and it's the second hut, right? So you'll get them to jump on. It's a little gap, but it's enough to get you going. And so everything, even the cadence, we talk about stacking plays. Like you stack cadence, and if you stack cadence really well, it puts you in a position to execute at a high level. So I think all the level of detail that goes into this kids game is pretty remarkable. Like we could spend hours and hours and hours talking about, when Bill Callahan was here, like how we had like 7 different calls for the same block based on the linebacker position. And that's the level of detail that some people approach this game with. And sometimes it's too much, but I think it's always fun when people get into the weeds there and really stress themselves and stress their players from a mental standpoint.
On the too much route, we'll wrap up with this fun story. And I can't remember who the lineman was, so their name will get spared, but someone will inevitably go back in 2015 Washington football land and figure out who it was. But they had someone who kept jumping off of sides every week. And it was like, he would get like 2 or 3 a game. Yeah. And I remember we did an interview with Trent in the old studio, the old 980 studio.
Right.
That was at the park. And we finished, and I go, hey, by the way, what's up with whoever jumping off sides? And I thought Trent was going to fall backwards out of the chair. He just was like, oh. He's like, dude, I don't know. I was like, because you guys said, isn't the play call like play call on 1, ready, break? It's the last thing you hear out of the huddle. He's like, yeah. And I was like, then don't you guys use like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever it is to like reinforce that? He's like, yeah. We like the quarterback, Kirk will be like, whatever, on 1, ready, break. And then we'll walk to the line of scrimmage and I'll be like, hey, Monday. And then we get in our stance, and then this jackwagon keeps jumping off sides. He was so mad. It did not compute in Trent's head. It was. I mean, in hindsight, it's hilarious. Probably wasn't great for that guy because I don't know that he was a starter and probably wasn't. If he was, it wasn't for that much longer because he couldn't stay on sides. But like, there's little things like that too, where there's so much to think about that something as simple as the snap count can mess you up, even though you're being reminded 14 times between the time it's on one and you get to the line of scrimmage and the guy next to you is be like, hey, Monday.
Yeah.
That's the first day of the week. Remember, we got plans on Monday.
Yeah. Dude, it's I will say cadence, especially in the NFL, was something that was really hard to kind of get a mastery of because there's so many different levels of it, and because defenses do so much stuff. So you get up there and it's like 18, it's normal 18, right? And you're expecting there to be a 6 technique, and you're like, okay, the 6 technique lines up head over the tight end, but he's actually a 5, and then there's a Sam linebacker, and the safety's rotating down. And so you're like, okay, we're probably gonna get a Sam strong safety here, and you're like, okay, so I'm gonna block that. That is all happening while the quarterback is doing the cadence. So sometimes you lose the cadence. You forget what you're doing. And you might even remember it's on 2 or whatever it is on Tuesday. But because you're so conditioned, you're like a Pavlovian response to like
Yeah.
the hut, like you'll just flinch in your stance, you know? And so unless you're actively thinking this is on 2, and it does, in my opinion, it does dampen your ability to look at the defense because you have to hold that in there the whole time.
Right.
You have to kind of be a little bit more passive in your stance. So there is a process. Everyone says just go on different cadences. It does, because you've conditioned on one so much that when you get out of that, it's a little bit challenging. You have to actually give it its own kind of mental space in your head. So I think people make fun of when that happens, but it happens all the time. It happens everywhere I've been. It's like the O-line don't like going on 2 sometimes, because they have to do so much adjusting. Like the center, for example, they forget the cadence too because they're calling the mic point. He says, hey, change the mic. He changes the mic, and then he snaps it on 1 when it's supposed to be on 2, and everyone's standing there. It's just because there's so much you're seeing in the defensive picture that it clouds your thought perspective. But it is interesting.
Totally. Also, just for the record, the numbers and letters mean, or the colors and numbers mean nothing outside of unless sometimes the color is like specific, like yeah, we're going on black or we're going on white, we're going on whatever, and you know the other ones are dummies. But the 80, like I kept asking people when I was first got on the beat and like was doing some of these fun stories on it. I was like, by the way, why is it 80? Why is it white 80, blue 80? And it's like, I don't know, it sounds good. And you're like, what? There's no the old classic blue 42. There's nothing there.
So I was with a couple different teams, and they would change the white. So they'd say blue for 2, and they'd say green for first set, right? They would, and so if you were really like listening, you could pick the cadence up, and they were trying to get it so the quarterback could change the cadence in the cadence, and you'd have to listen to the cadence, but that kind of falls apart. Then I was in a system where they would do, it was like, so white 80, so they could say white 80, weak 80, which meant they were checking the play to weak, which is a run.
Right.
And if you didn't hear it, you were, you know what I mean? So there was a couple of systems where those colors did mean something, but I've never been in a system where the numbers have meant anything.
Right. Yeah. The what I meant more of is like, why do they say white 80 instead of like downset hut or whatever? Yeah. Like, because at some point someone decided that could be a thing that could become confusing. But also now, like here, I think last year, wasn't it like basically it was like white 80 and then turbo, and like turbo was like, hey, forget whatever I said before. Like turbo means go now.
Yeah, right. And everyone's got a call like that. Everyone's got a cadence like that. You just, oh gosh, we were talking about cadence. White 80. So the reason you do the white 80 is because it's rhythmic.
Right.
Like think about when you've ever been in the blocks at a race. It's like ready, set, and there's this long anticipatory period before the gun goes off, right? Mm-hmm. So what they're trying to do is eliminate that period. So they want you to know exactly where you are in the cadences all time so you can explode off, right? It's like, who's faster, the guy who can anticipate and roll into the snap count or the guy who's waiting for the snap count? And a lot of like offensive linemen, they preferred the rolling of a rhythmic cadence. So like I mentioned, green cadence, right? Which was, it was white 80 set, because they liked that better than on 2 because it just rolled right into the set, as opposed to white 80 set, hut, and then there's a long pause, hut, right? That delay got them out of the cadence so they couldn't explode off the ball or explode into their pass set. So that's what the structure is for. Now it could be any
Right.
words you want,
Right.
just as long as it's rhythmic into that thing. So like Cam Newton used to have a hilarious cadence. It was like,
oh, his was the best.
it was like ready, he's like, oh, but he's like, so he's trying to get the rhythmic of it, right? It's like
Right.
trying to keep the ready long right into the quick set go. So, but yeah, his cadence was hilarious back in the day. We're way off topic, but
That's fine. Who knows? Maybe we'll actually just hold that whole cadence thing and put that out as a bonus segment tomorrow. So if you're listening to this as part of a full podcast, great. If you got a bonus segment, then congratulations. Extra content that you didn't know you needed. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.